Okay. Okay, let's start with the little tapping exercise just to warm us up and get in the mood, as it were. So rubbing your hands together and then slightly tapping over your face, pads of your fingers or the tips of your fingers. Over the top of your head and down to your neck. I use the palms of my hands for this. Down to one shoulder. Just gently pay attention to the sensations that you get when you tap your arm and your shoulder, on the side. It's a useful way of getting a little bit more in touch with the body, how you're feeling, into your back. Around your hips. Legs. Right onto your belly. Maybe a little bit stronger on the upper part of your chest. And then just standing comfortably, feet below your hips. Soften your knees and your hips. And just turning in that center part of the body. So as always, whether you're brand new to this or whether you're experienced at this, first sort of order of the day, as it were, the first part of the session is really just to give you a sense of arriving in the session. We've all had to make arrangements in one way or another to be present, whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching it on the recording. So just letting your attention settle into your body, feeling the sensation of movement without judgment, and without at the moment any sense that you're going to suddenly magically get it perfectly right. Kind of dual process really of mind and body as you settle into your posture. Those of you who are familiar with it, in particular, get this strong sense of a downward movement through your body, particularly through your hips, feeling the hips and buttocks just overhanging slightly, but not a deep posture, not straining in your legs or knees. Just enough to give you this feeling of your weight beginning to drop down more towards your feet, a kind of readjustment of how we normally stand, which is to really try and push our weight up. So if you follow that movement downwards, if you follow that pull of gravity downwards in your mind, then both mind and body literally sort of ground. And what we might call thoughts that are extraneous for the moment, unnecessary for the moment, just allowed to settle back, to take a back seat for a while. And so the main focus for your attention is the exercise that you're doing, your posture, the sensations of movement. And so really at the heart of the movement, there's this feeling of quietness, of stillness beginning to make itself felt in your mind. And of course, your feet are sort of still on the ground, just providing the foundation, the physical foundation for the movement. Rooting down is I suppose you could say, the sort of foundation the primary stage of all Tai Chi. This combination of the physical dropping of your weight, which of course is an ongoing process of yielding to the pull of gravity, and of returning your thoughts to that route. Again, an ongoing process. So it's just something we want to get into the habit of. And this is a useful habit to develop. Remember my first teacher often saying that we would find ourselves standing like this in supermarket queues. And of course, she was really referring to that mental process, that in those times of frustration, those little things that crop up all day for us one way or another, we can just find a sense of stillness that enables us to engage with the situation in a slightly different way. And what we're learning to do here is to engage with a standard thing for us, which is the pull of gravity on our bodies, in a way that rather than straining against it and constantly trying to pull ourselves up, recognizes that power, that force, that energy acting through the body, and seeks to align itself with it. We might liken it to something like a sailor adjusting the sails of their boat, so that the winds and the currents that might otherwise have blown them over or carried them onto the rocks actually propels them forwards. Because once we've started to get that sense of settling, we realize we don't just collapse on the floor, that there is a kind of counter movement within our body, the resilience of particularly our legs, but our whole body, that effectively provides an upward movement. And in the basic posture, we really look for a sense of balance, a sense of equilibrium between those two forces. And this is one of the great motivating energies in Tai Chi. It's something that is constantly with us, that we constantly draw on. So you could say that there's a downward movement and an upward movement, and as it passes through the center of our body, that area between hips and pelvis and our waist, then we alter that. We sort of, like putting a water wheel in a stream, we turn it into a more horizontal movement. And this, along with breathing, perhaps, is the sort of primary power, the primary energy that we're going to bring into movements. There are many forms of energetic responses within our body that can all become part of the movement eventually. But as I said earlier, this is the starting point, and this is the foundation that everything else is built on. So that starting point is not the best way of thinking of it. This is the base on which everything else continues to be built. So it's constantly there. When we manage to sink our weight a little bit, we lose some of the tightness in our body, particularly the upper part of our body. And that allows for a more spacious quality inside the body, less tightness, less stiffness, more space for movement. And so the movement becomes smoother, the flow becomes smoother. A certain rhythm can develop in our body, and with that rhythm, we begin to feel a sense of what we might call connection, or how when we move in our hips, for instance, our shoulders respond to that. When we move in our shoulders, our arms respond to that. And that feeling of connection will feed back into our awareness and has itself a very centering, grounding, calming quality to it. Just noticing areas of your body where maybe there isn't that flow. There's inevitably going to be areas of blockage and tightness. So just be aware of those gradually over the course of the session. Hopefully much of that will dissolve away as we sort of adjust our posture and we go through various patterns of movement. But always very gently, never forcing the movement. And not forcing them physically and trying not to get too too kind of contracted in our minds around that. You know, if you've got a stiff shoulder, it's very easy to, shoulder stiff, can't get rid of that tightness. It's good to switch your attention to other areas of the body where there is a flow, where there is a sense of movement. So we get a more sort of equable, more balanced view of our body. Turn your hands palm forwards and raise them up a little bit. No higher with your hands than your shoulders, elbows lower, a bit more expansive in the upper part of the body. And then letting your hands drop. Yeah. Come 1 foot out, step forward. Keep the width of your step, so you keep that physical foundation about the same in length, moving your weight forwards and backwards, and feeling how your body, your upper body, begins to turn in response to that. Notice which way it's turning. I suppose what you might call the most natural way for our body to turn is in the direction that our feet are pointing. But you may find that, for instance, you're turning the opposite way. Sometimes that happens because we're thinking too hard about it. You know, this is an exercise where we allow the body to move in its natural way as much as possible. But it could also mean that there's a bit of tightness, a bit of stiffness somewhere. So don't look to sort of force the movement. Don't think, I've got to turn this way. If you feel yourself being pushed this way, just let your body find its own path. Again, later we can begin to work a bit more emphatically with that, but for the moment, this is very much just the preparation. This movement is driven from the ground, and so again, an awareness of that contact with the ground beneath your feet is a key part of this. And then try the same thing on the other side. Okay, so having warmed our body up physically a little bit, got the blood and the energy flowing, having brought our attention into our body, so we're beginning to build up a picture of what's happening. We now start to refine that. And again, we go back to our physical structure, our physical posture. Feet are hip width apart to support your hips, and then your hips are more likely to support your shoulders. You have a little bit of kind of leeway in that, depending on what actually suits you at the moment. Toes ideally pointing forwards, but again, they can be slightly turned out if that's more comfortable, but try and avoid a kind of sloppy feet or anywhere. Being aware of your feet. And I come a little bit closer so you can see what I'm doing. Just rolling your weight forwards and backwards in your body, in your feet, so that you start to feel that your weight is mobile. Here it's in the balls of your feet more. As you go back, it's more towards your heels. Going too far means that you get pulled over by gravity, or more likely, you start to stiffen up and strain. So there's a midpoint, balance point, shall we call it, where gravity pulls you down into your feet, rather than pulling you forwards or backwards. If I use this pole to represent sort of the line of the pull of gravity through my body, or one part of it, then really what I'm looking for, if you say here, I line myself up with that pole, I can just be here and begin to settle. If I'm a bit like this, then there's a constant kind of struggle against this. It's not a static posture though, because our bodies change and everything changes around us, and particularly as we start to move, there's little nuances creep in. But just for the moment, trying to settle into this, trying to find that midpoint, that point of equilibrium. And then having found that, having had a sense of this is how it can feel, refining that a little bit, ideally, and this may not be comfortable for you at the moment, but what we look for is to bring our weight slightly forwards. You see, that brings my knees above the balls of my feet, roughly speaking, and actually has me angling forwards. And then I just allow gravity to draw down on my hips and buttocks, and I sit back, and we have this, once again, this sense of sitting, this feeling of overhanging in lower back and hips and buttocks. Hips roughly in line with your arms. Feeling the support of your body, but from your legs, of course. They're the things that are holding you up. Feeling that your upper body begins to be supported by the front of your body. So trying not to pull your belly in, puff your chest out, and in those habits that we built up. And as you lose some of the tightness in the big muscles and other soft tissue in the body, try and get a growing awareness of what still supports you from within. So, for instance, if my shoulders are up around my neck like this, and I manage to drop my shoulders, I still have a sense of my chest cavity, my rib cage is still there. And all these things will interact with each other. One way, particularly the relationship between our soft tissue and things like the skeleton. So this is the position that gives us a sense of what we call in Tai Chi central equilibrium. And it's good to get a fix on how this feel in your body, because it's a quality that we want to maintain all the way through the movements. And so we build an intention that this is how we want everything to feel, even when we're in. Now, your hips drop back a little bit more, and then feeling yourself being strong. This takes the root deeper, and also it obviously helps to condition the legs. And as we go deeper, we begin to appreciate this sense that there's a movement and energy that pushes us up. It's like getting a ball in water, and you push the ball down, and as you push the ball down, you feel the pressure of the water pushing the ball back up. Now, although we've moved out of that basic posture, we're still trying to maintain that sense of equilibrium within the body. We don't go up too high. We don't want to lock our knees back. We don't go down too far. We don't want the knees to tighten up or stiffen. So central equilibrium is not a static state. It's an ongoing state process, and you may find yourself sinking down and losing that. Maybe time to come up at that point, or maybe there's a bit of tightness in a hip, and you're able to just get that feeling of allowing that tightness to drain down. Again, a rhythm will build, a slow rhythm this time of your body expanding and then contracting. And that too contributes to this feeling of equilibrium. And so the intention is always to try and maintain this, whatever we're doing. And increasingly, we realize in Tai Chi the significance of that intention, the way our bodies naturally respond to intention all the time. We're just trying to bring that process into our awareness, into our conscious awareness. And then bring your hands around so you're cradling the ball, fingers pointing towards each other. As you push up, that expansion pushes your elbows out, your hands will naturally come up. Turn them over, let your hips drop down, feel your shoulders dropping down. And then at the bottom of the movement, again, feeling that push up through your hips, your back, your shoulders. So having established central equilibrium as something that we want to try and maintain, we now look for ways to keep that in movement, because obviously as soon as we start to move, as soon as we start to change, that quality is compromised. And the basic process by which we do this comes from the understanding of the Chinese term "sum," and this is the term that's often translated simply as relaxed. It has a variety, a spectrum of meanings: calm, reference to the mind, a feeling that we're able to release, to let go of areas of tightness. When we feel a muscle clenching up, we can just begin to encourage it, to intend it to open up a little bit. And these are all part of the sort of overall foundation. These are things that we want to, as much as possible, be with us the whole practice, and ideally, of course, through the rest of our day. It's the exercise rooting down, because its principal feature is this ongoing process of our center of gravity sinking and our body responding to that with an upward movement. Breathing is just calm, natural, however's natural for you. If you, in other sessions, if I've offered an insight into breathing and that has worked for you, you can bring that into the process. But the main thing at the moment is that your breathing is in harmony with both your posture, your structure, and with your movements. And if you just allow it to happen, then that's what will be the outcome. This time, keeping that movement going in your hips, your legs, bring your hands around and out into the movement, the wild goose. Here we might want to bring in the image of the bird in flight, if that has meaning for us. It can offer quality of a smoothness of movement, a gracefulness of movement, but also, naturally enough, powerful movement. If the image doesn't work for you, then it's not a failure. You shouldn't go chasing after it. There's a variety of images that we use in Tai Chi, one of which, the image of moving through water, is again a universal quality in Tai Chi. There's sometimes described as swimming on dry land. And our tendency to release tightness in muscles and joints, which we get generally when we're in water, is a strong feature of our movements. It's a good example of that quality of Sun in action. So again, that's another image that you might want to bring into the movement. And then letting your hands drop down. Again, with your elbows leading, this time as you push up, drawing your fingers around in a smooth circle, not too high. And that lovely feeling of an expansive, a growing movement, easing through your body from your feet to your fingertips. Parting the clouds. Again, the image of the clouds parting to let the sun shine through and carry with it possibly a feeling of opening, of expansion, very much characteristic of this exercise and indeed all of them. One more time. This time, instead of letting the whole of our body actively respond to that internal dynamic, downward and upward, we fix our attention on one side, pushing one arm up, winding the arm around, pulling down, bringing our attention back to the center of our body and then to the other side. Same thing on this side, expanding again from feet to fingertips and then going down. This is dragon plucks the stars from the sky. So that dynamic when we get with gravity working downwards through our body and our body responding, it's constantly with us and potentially it's a constant source of this energy that we move with. Bringing a deliberate, intentional action to choose different patterns of movement, different exercises, according to either what we may need, or of course in a session like this, a set routine of movements become familiar with. So it tends to be easier to bring that intentional quality to the movement when we have that familiarity with the routine. One more time. And just stand. Shake out. These adjustments, these physical adjustments to the body are quite simple, but can have a profound effect on the body. So we can't overlook the significance of physically conditioning our body in the change from a very stiff posture, straining against the pull of gravity, to one that is more in tune with the pull of gravity. These are significant physical changes in our body. So always bear that in mind. It takes time and practice to build that conditioning. But essentially, we bring our attention into our body. We bring our intentions into our body. We become more aware of structure, become more aware of our posture and more aware of the dynamic qualities acting on our body. And as I say, principally, the pull of gravity is always with us, and our body is always responding to that. And we find ways to harmonize with that rather than strain against it. And then we try and take those qualities into different exercises, which I think is a big challenge. So sometimes this will work for you, sometimes it won't. So going back to the basic posture, the slightly higher posture, but not locked. You see, my knees have a slightly curved, sometimes described as those little ball tucked in behind each knee, little ball held in the front of your hips, so that as we stand, we allow these movements through the body with less restriction. I sometimes use the image that our body is a bit like a drain pipe on the side of our house, allowing the water to flow downwards. And then occasionally you might find, particularly where there's a curve in the pipe or something like that, it gets blocked, and then we look for ways to get rid of that blockage and to return to the free flow. So here, the next couple of exercises, trying to maintain this stance and bringing your hands to the side of your body. Next movement has 4 stages. The first, bringing your hands around in front, pressing up a little bit, with the lengthening through your back and spine, and then down, coming back to the starting position next to your hips, next to your center, and then raising again and pushing your hands out to the sides and turning a little bit in your hips, and then back. Pushing out, turning the other way, and back, and then pushing out. And so you feel that expansion, beginning to feel that expansion coming from the center of the body. And returning our hands and returning our attention to that central point. Noticing how when we move in the center part of our body, it affects the whole of our body. Noticing how it's that center part of our body, sometimes referred to as the lower dantian, that is dropping towards the ground. So in a very real physical sense, we become more centered, more grounded, mind and body. And this is a good exercise for reinforcing that quality. We begin to recognize that there is a physical location within the body that we can bring our attention to for that quietening, settling sense of, again, finding that in the stillness, calmness within the movement. That physical location is really from that center of our body down into the ground. And remember that the very act of bringing your attention intentionally to that area is going to have an effect on your nervous system. We more or less create a pathway. We maintain that pathway, we keep it clear so that it becomes more available to us, more usable in different situations. Again, this is one of the great takeaways, one of the great things that we can take out of the actual practice into our daily life. Again, you might want to imagine moving through water. We're taking that basic energy, downward and upward movement, and beginning to shape it. Almost projecting that shape you like to think of it like that, through that central part of our body. And as we become more familiar with the patterns, and this will happen with particular exercises that you find yourself favoring, then we begin to develop this ability to really make our movements more intentional, rather than feel that our movements are sort of being dictated by other forces. This time, letting your hands drop down. This is the movement called circling palms. And this time, we let the expanding movement push one hand out, let it curve up until it's in line with our nose and our navel, coming straight down the center line. And then, once again, pushing out and then if it's comfortable for you, you can add a stage to this where turn. If the turn, you feel that you're sort of stiffening up when you make the turn, then either try and apply that quality of sung, that releasing feeling, or just stay facing forwards. Sometimes we can find more movement through that process of letting go. Now try on the other side, noticing any difference between one side of your body and another, which so often is. And then add in the turn. Remember that, that feeling of central equilibrium, Zhongding is the Chinese term, is one that we want to maintain. So as we turn, that's an intention, and we want our body to respond to that intention. So if you feel you've reached a limit here, you don't force the movement. You don't get to here and think, oh, I'm going to go further. That's as far as I'm going to go. And again, just stand. So one of our big challenges is how to respond to gravity. To force that act on us, we don't want to get into a fight with this perpetual force, and yet we want to remain upright. And once again, the center of the body becomes significant here. You simply stand again, just dropping down slightly, and tilt your pelvis forward so your hips go back, and then let gravity pull your hips down and feel how this brings your body back into line. Do that again. Tilt the pelvis forwards, your head and shoulders will go forwards a bit, and then without pulling on your shoulders, just almost like you're flopping into your favorite armchair. From here, and so if you can imagine the chair behind you. Well, of course, what will happen is if you do that standing, you'll fall over. But the realignment of your pelvis will help you to bring your weight back to that point of equilibrium in the feet. So the next two exercises, making good use of that, very carefully, and be quite strong on knees and back. And I'll do the movements quite big so you can see what's happening, but just take them to whatever point you wish. First of all, sinking down and pushing up, letting that push your arms out. And then as you sink down again, hips going back. Notice how that brings your upper body over, and then sit back into this deeper posture and push up. It's called rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. It's a smooth extension through your back and your spine and out into your fingertips, not straining. Don't get too fixed on your shoulders. Let the movement be guided from the center of your body, particularly your hips. As your hips go back, your shoulders will naturally go forwards. If you try too hard to strain forwards, you'll just fall over. And settle down. So rowing the boat in the middle of the lake one more time. And then as you come up this time, hands resting in front of your belly, palm down. So now we combine the horizontal turn in the center with that vertical movement. You turn in one direction, push your hips back, so your hands are pushed forwards, swing your hips across, let them drop down and come back. The same thing in the other direction. This is called polishing the table. And with that, see here, turn, so my hips go back and then across. It's a bit exaggerated. And then back. Again, very carefully. And gradually letting the movement build becomes a very smooth, sweeping circular movement. Polishing the table. One more in each direction. Again, you could apply that image of moving through water. That's a useful image too. And then your legs a touch. Now, we change the stance once again. Forward stance, front foot pointing straight ahead, back foot slightly turned out. Let your weight drop back. And that sort of compresses your leg. And then when your leg expands, let it push you forwards, settling into the front leg, feeling it push you back. So again, making use of that very dynamic quality between the pull of gravity and your body's response. And again, using the center of your body to direct the movement, to turn it into this horizontal forwards and backwards movement. So bringing in this aspect of weight transfer. Another really important dynamic in Tai Chi. And always remember, this isn't just about Tai Chi. Rooting down, alignment, weight transfer are all key factors in lots of aspects of our lives, most particularly in terms of stability, mobility. These are the things that we, again, Tai Chi can offer to us if you have problems with your mobility, if you have problems with, particularly with your stability. This is a really good exercise to practice because it brings in these qualities of central equilibrium, of releasing, of yielding to the pull of gravity, finding a structure and a way of moving that enables us to stay in line with the pull of gravity. And with the lower center of gravity, with the rooting down, just naturally more stable. All of these things run counter to how we often move. So the ideas are very simple, but not necessarily easy. And then Drop into your back foot and raise your front toes so more of your weight settles down in the back foot. Then you can turn the front foot out a little bit, go forwards, pushing the back knee forwards, let your heel come up. And gradually letting your body travel a little bit further. So you want to get to a point where now we take that idea that we had earlier, bringing our body into line over two legs. Remember, we found that line with the pull of gravity. Now we're looking to do it over one leg. The pelvis level, finding that point of equilibrium in our feet. And then bring one foot in, use the back foot, push it back out, heel goes down, toes go down. Move the front toes, bring the foot in, heel, and then toes. You don't have to stand on one leg. You put the toes down just like these to help you. Checking your posture, trying not to tilt over. And to give yourself a moment just to adjust. Inevitably, we get just a little bit out of line. We can come back to that. And again, that's a really important takeaway for you. We plant the foot, you put the foot down and press it gently in. And now, try that with the other foot. Beginning to transfer your weight. We're trying to find a sense of stability. I try and avoid in this context term balance. I think balance has a different meaning in Tai Chi, but often for us, balance between opposites. But here, what we're looking to do is to root down, to align ourselves, not all the things we've been looking at. And that gives us a feeling of stability. We only need to balance when we cease to be stable, I think. Moving from the ground, moving our weight, think of it as a little push into the ground or an expansion from the leg, helps us to maintain our posture in movement. Once again, beginning to just raise your toes and your heel. Notice whether, as you do that, you habitually sort of lean backwards or forwards. Just allowing your hips to drop, maintaining the alignment of your pelvis and your hips. Still that feeling perhaps of a slight sense of overhanging in lower back, hips and buttocks. And stepping in and planting the foot. And then step through. And then change direction. Okay, shake it. Now, have your right foot forwards, bringing the upper body and arms back into the movement, starting with your weight in your back foot, ease forwards, and this time let that movement draw your arms through. This is fisherman casting it. A sort of wave-like quality of movement through your body. Your arms hang. Again, as though you're moving through water. You're moving forwards and backwards. You're facing forwards, and so your arms are swinging forwards. Driven by this movement of your weight, which in its turn is driven by the dynamic between your body and the pull of gravity. And other things, noticing changes of expansion and contraction, moving through your back, your sides, front of your body. It all become part of the movement. This time, go into the front foot, turn your hands palm down, and as you come back, turn into your left. And then as you go forwards, turning back to the front. Letting your hands, once again, follow a circular pattern. This is an exercise called stirring the beans. So we have this combination of rooting down, of our weight moving, of our center turning, guiding the movement, shaping the movements of our upper body and arms, rooted in the feet, transmitted through our legs, guided, directed through the center of our body, and expressed through upper body and arms. Stir in the beans. Don't let your arms follow your shoulders follow your hips. Turn in the center. Letting the arms extend out a bit, trying not to stiffen up in your fingers, your elbows. Pace is set by the movement of your weight, the turns. Shake out. And then same thing with the left foot forwards, back into what we call the bow stance, starting with fisherman castanet, where we feel that relationship between the pull of gravity, the movement of our weight, the alignment with the center part of our body, and the movement of our arms, a very simple pattern in a very simple formula. And again, that awareness of those connections through the body feeds into our intention. This is intentional movement. And gradually, those fundamental qualities, rooting down, weight transfer, being centered, also sort of go into the background. They don't totally disappear. We're aware of them in the back of our minds, but not having to constantly think about them. We practice that again, something that means that they begin to extend into our daily lives. This time, changing to stirring the beans, you go back, left hand's palm down, it's drawn around, and you go forwards, the right arm is pushed out, extending slightly. Easy and gently. Again, feeling the changes through the upper part of your body. As your left arm swings around, you feel an expansion in the left side of the body. As you go forwards, feeling that expansion in the right side of your body. Noticing how when we bring our attention and our intention to those subtle changes in the upper part of our body, we begin to, again, amplify them. The intentionality of the movement builds the movement from within. Tai Chi and Qigong are internal arts, working with patterns of movement, patterns of energy, intentionally and deliberately to produce the bigger external movements. stirring the beans. Now this time, go into your front foot, rest there for a moment, turn, let your arms swing out, raise the back heel, bring the foot in. If you haven't got room in front of you, just do it the other way around. Plant the foot forwards, go forwards, the hands drop down, turn. So the arms, a little bit like the wild goose, stepping in. This is called dragonfly skims the water. Remember, when you bring your foot in, letting your hips drop back, and maybe finding you're able to raise the leg. If you're not, just leave it here like this, it's no problem. Coming in, almost hovering in the air here. Perhaps that's where the dragonfly image comes from. And then changing direction. As you raise your leg, if you're raising your leg, notice whether it's sort of tilting your pelvis out. That may take a while to sort out, but again, your trend here is that quality of releasing the areas that are building up the tightness. Moving forwards again. If you're finding that it's just too wobbly with your foot up, and again, toes just lightly on the floor, maintain the flow of the movement, and again, changing direction. And bring your feet down. As some of you know, I'm not a great fan of having to stand on one leg. But if it's something that you feel you want to work on, but you're finding it difficult, I would suggest that what you do is hold on to something. Play with this. Feel what happens when you raise a knee. Do you stiffen up? Do you tighten up somewhere unnecessarily? You know, here I'm pulling on my hip, it's tight. I can let my hip drop. But you need help to do that. You need to hold on to something, because if you're wobbling around, you're not going to be able to get that sense of releasing. So, you know, this movement and combined with this movement, it quite often cause you to twist up in the lower part of your body. So just investigate that a little bit, and you know, give yourself time to understand these things. Remembering that one of the key things here is sun, releasing the feeling by hold a tight fist here, everything's stiff and horrible, tension in my shoulder. What I can do is if I just open the fist a little bit, I create a space in there. I get this feeling of the muscles unclenching, the soft tissue unclenching. And this is what we call releasing in Tai Chi, letting go, softening, different ways of describing it. They're all aspects of sun. And so we learn that when we're under pressure in that way, both mentally and physically, sun is the response that we build in that, not giving way to whatever's acting on us, but not straining and finding this third way. And this last exercise emphasizes that, because you know, it would be nice to think that we had these qualities of being centered, being rooted, being aligned the whole time, but in practice, of course, we don't. So this is called Embrace Tiger, Return to the Mountain. Sinking back and then push up. Aware of the pull of gravity on your hips, letting your hips begin to soften, the shoulders, your elbows, bringing your hands around, though they're holding the ball, and then inwards, and finally, hips dropping down, drawing you back to the root, and then After a moment, gently pushing up again. Embracing tiger. Return to the mountain with this really important sense that we can come back. And then from that position of coming back, build the movement up again. This is again an integral process. Yang, Di Yin, Di Yang, Di Yin, Tai Chi. Embrace tiger, return to mountain. Just letting everything settle, mind and body, just for a moment before we move out. Easy and gently. Remembering this process, remembering what it is that brings you back. An image, sensation in your body. These are the things that you can find become useful to us as we go through our day. One more time. And lovely. Thank you very much for watching and joining in, everybody. Feel free to contact me with any questions and enjoy the rest of your day. So bye for now.